I'm pretty good at this stuff, and I think it's
okay, here it is.
disgraceful. And Google's being sued, Facebook's being sued, and many others are being sued by their so-called government, if you call it a government, EU. They don't treat us right. They don't treat us right as a country. So we're going to protect our companies. We have to protect our companies. So we're not going to have any companies left anymore. I also want to thank Apple, though, for announcing they're going to invest $500 billion in our country. That's the biggest investment anybody's probably made to this date.
That's a lot of money.
Do it very quickly, and that's because of tariffs.
Shout out to 10
They don't
Apple.
want to pay the tariffs, and they feel very strongly about the country now. They wouldn't have done it without us. Without the Trump administration, they wouldn't have done it. But they feel very strongly about the direction of the country. The polls have shown that too. The polls are coming out showing direction of the company is of the country is the best they've ever seen. Actually, best they've ever seen. So I just want to thank Tim Cook and Apple for the confidence. $500 billion. That's the biggest investment anyone has made in a short period of time.
Mr. President, have you spoken today with the House Republican holdouts who said they would not be supporting the budget resolution?
Well, I'm not involved in that. They know what I want, and the Senate knows what I want, too. And the Senate's got a bill that's very strong, having to do with the taxes, because the taxes is what's bringing all these companies in. So, and without it, by the way, you'd have to double your own taxes. Everybody would be doubled up, and you'd have the biggest tax increase ever. So the House has a bill and the Senate has a bill, and I'm looking at them both, and I'll make decisions. But I don't know where they are in the vote. I know the Senate's doing very well, and the House is doing very well, but each one of them has things that I like. So we'll see if we can come together.
Okay. Mr. President, can you clarify, hopefully once and for all, what your expectations are with this email to federal employees? What are you going to use that information for? And do you see it as voluntary, like OPM has said, or mandatory?
Yeah, well, it's somewhat voluntary, but it's also if you don't answer, I guess you get fired. What it really is, what it is do people exist? We have this massive government with millions of people, and nobody knows who's working for the government, who's not. So what they're doing is they're sending out a letter to everybody, and they're saying, what were the things you did last week? I guess they ask for 5. And if people are working, it's easy. I could tell you 5 things I did last week. I could tell you 5 things I did 6 weeks ago, right? If they're there and they're working, they're able to say they did 5 things during work.
That'd be easy to say,
they're working and they're with us and they have no further obligation. If they're not, it could be there's no such person. It could be that the person's no longer working. They're no longer living at that address. They may be moved. Maybe they moved to a different country, or maybe the person doesn't exist. And we then take that person off the payroll, and we save a lot of money by
That's the
doing
office space.
But that's one of the only ways. I think
Just
it's
fix
a very
the
small
glitch.
thing. And it says, if you don't answer, essentially, there's a penalty to pay. Like that's the end of the job.
Smart.
Musk has said that. The order itself doesn't say that. I think that's part of the confusion. Is he speaking for you when he says?
Yeah. Everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility. The old statement, the buck stops here, right? Famous statement. Well, I can say the same thing. The buck stops here. No, we have to find out if people are getting paid and they're not working, and they have a problem. Let's say they have another job. And then
he is the president, right?
It's a big problem if they're working for somebody else but getting paid by the U.S. government, and that would mean that they're not allowed to be doing that. They're not allowed to be working for us and be working for somebody else. We're paying them a lot of money. We're paying them. So we'll see. That solves that problem. Most people aren't willing to say that, we're doing this, and this for the U.S. government, and yet they're at another job, because that's a big problem for them if they do that. So in some cases, they're not writing back. And if they don't write
10
back,
people doing one person's job.
they end up eventually
and it's not getting done.
We give them extensions, but that was something we thought about a long time ago. We give them extensions, but we'll see. We have to make sure, number one, that we have people, number two, that they're working, and number two, they're working for us, not for another company.
Or for China.
Zelensky's coming on Friday to meet with you and is the mineral deal sorted out?
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, you know, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy. And it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal. It could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting. A war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that? It didn't happen for 4 years. Would have never happened. And never I went into this situation, and he spent money like nobody's ever seen, $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion.
That's a lot.
Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan.
I've heard this before.
And we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion,
I've heard this
nobody really
before.
knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that, but it means probably more than that. So what we're doing is now we're saying,
Bingo
look,
card.
we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like
Macron
very few
corrected them
people have
yesterday?
had.
They
Shouldn't
did.
have had this problem because it
He
shouldn't
did.
have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American
he's not here
taxpayer now
today.
is going to get their money back plus.
Mr. President, yesterday with Emmanuel Macron, you said you had spoken to Putin about the idea of peacekeepers in Ukraine, that Putin was fine with it. The Kremlin, I guess, has said that that's actually unacceptable to them.
Oh,
What's real
that's,
here?
that's not what I was told. But you're going to need some form of peacekeeping, so something will be done that's going to be satisfactory to everybody. We need peacekeeping too.
Any situation
It's
where
actually
American troops involved?
it's actually something I did discuss, but a form of peacekeeping that's acceptable.
When are
to
they gonna
everybody.
put the fat
Ultimately,
people
we'll
in
be
jail?
able to agree on something. I'm sure.
With Ukraine and this mineral deal, what does Ukraine get in return, Mr. President?
$350 billion.
I just said it.
Lots of equipment, and military equipment, and the right to fight on, and originally the right to fight. Look, Ukraine, I will say, they're very brave and they're good soldiers, but without the United States and its money and its military equipment, this war would have been over in a very short period of time. In fact, I was the one that gave the javelins. You remember the javelins? That was me. That wasn't Obama. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And they wiped out a lot of tanks with those javelins. And the expression was that
are those like laws or
Obama
something?
gave sheets and I gave the javelins. That was a big deal at the time. It wiped out. That was the beginning when people said, wow, that's something.
Yeah?
Well,
Okay.
that was American equipment. Without American equipment, this war would have been over very quickly. And American money, too.
Gemma's
I mean, a lot
missile.
of
Well,
money.
laws light anti.
That war
Was it
fighting equipment
light anti-tank
and
weapon
the
or something like that? Yeah.
ammunition, that's sustained going forward for Ukraine, and how long is
But they're
this
actual
sustained?
missiles.
Well,
Okay.
it could go forward for a while, and maybe until
Guided
we have a deal with
missiles. Shit.
Russia. Look, we need to have a deal with Russia, otherwise it's going to continue. But now, when Americans put up their money, the taxpayer money, and the president approves it, we're getting our money back in some form. But it could go on for a while, or it could be settled quickly. I think it's going to be settled quickly. I spoke with President Putin. I think he wants to settle it.
That's
And,
convenient. That's great.
Once you get on with life, it's horrible. What's happening horrible.
Great.
Thousands of soldiers a week are being killed, and others too, but especially on the battlefield. Thousands a week are being killed, and we want that to end.
When you start, Mr. President,
Yeah, Brian?
Yes, okay. Real quickly, Carolyn Levitt, your press secretary, sent an earthquake through that briefing room earlier today announcing that the WHCA would not have any control over placing media in the seats, the briefing room. Just want to get your thoughts on that. And also on Air Force One, it's trending on X. People are talking about it. Get your thoughts.
Well, we're going to be now calling those shots. As you know, we won that lawsuit right there. See, the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful name. Most people agree. I don't know. It's, AP has been terrible. Look, I think they're radical left. I think they're third-rate reporters. I know the specific young lady that works on the account is terrible. She's a radical left lunatic, as far as I'm concerned. They don't treat us fairly.
Man.
That's number one. And number two, they had no right to do that. This is
He's still
the Gulf
got it
of
up, right?
America. And if you look at that shoreline, look at that shoreline. Look, from Florida, well, most of it is, it's called America. And vast majority, like big numbers. So I'm just admiring it as I look at it. I'm getting teary-eyed, but I don't want you to say Trump broke down and started crying. No, how beautiful is that? Look at the shoreline. Look at that.
Well,
That's America.
Can I shift our attention to Canada real quick?
Yes, please.
Last week, I spent some time with 2 government officials for Canada. And I was asking them how realistic is it that Canada would be the 51st state.
Yeah.
And they told me there is a path. Alberta is first.
Wow.
If they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia.
Wait.
There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true.
Canada,
Thank you,
yes,
Brian. It's
taking
true.
over Canada.
A lot of people
Alberta.
in Canada liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state.
The fuck
They'll
is
have
that?
to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us, which is really unfair to us. They make cars that we could make, and they send them back into the United States. They make
It's a province?
a lot of things,
The
including
fuck is that?
the sending of oil and everything. We don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. In fact, we're going to be freeing up, and I've asked Howard Lutnick
It's a
to
state?
get that done
Oh.
with Lee and everybody, Lee Zeldin, environmental. We're freeing up our forests. We're going to
Yeah.
be able to take down trees. Right now, you know, we're so restricted environmentally. We're going to be freeing it up with an emergency order. We have an emergency order, and we're going to be freeing up our forests. We have more forests than almost anybody, and great lumber, great trees. We don't need anybody's trees. We don't need trees from Canada or anybody else. In fact, we have to put the slits, as they call them, the area, 50, 60-yard area in between areas of trees. It stops the fires. And frankly, California should have been doing that for years.
Oh.
It's almost getting late. They're going to run out of forests the way they're going. What a shame. And by the way, the water is flowing in California.
There's
I
not
hope
going to
you
be
people
any
have
more
seen it.
trees soon.
But the water is flowing. Do you have a picture of that? I'd hold it up. Do you have a picture of that? Get a picture of it, please.
Uh-oh,
You know,
here we
had
go.
a little skirmish in California. I can't believe we had to do that, but we opened up the water in California. The water was flowing into a place called the Pacific Ocean.
I've heard of
Which for the
that.
Pacific Ocean is only a drop, but for us, it's more water than we can use in California. So I'll get you some photographs, but it's a beautiful sight. The water is flowing in California. Beautiful water from the
07
Pacific
Delta smells.
Northwest and beyond. And it flows down, and instead of being routed out to the Pacific Ocean, and this has been going on for 20 years more, in order to take care of a certain species of fish, which wasn't doing very well without water. So that's a big deal. It's like not reported. It's incredible. But California has a lot of water. That's going to take care of farmers. It's going to wetten up the land, and it's going to
Not
go
doing
all the way
so
down
well
to Los
without that
Angeles,
water.
where they have curfews on water, where they have all sorts of blocks on water. You can only do so much. We're going to put until just recently, they were going to put a number of gallons per person living in a house in Beverly Hills.
Oh, man,
on
this is
water. You're not going
amazing.
to have that problem anymore. Do you have a picture?
This is-
Let me
this
just see
is-
what
this is
that
really
looks
something
like.
special, boys.
How beautiful is that? Look at that beautiful water flowing. Look at that. That's
Oh,
going in
wow.
the dikes and other means of transportation. Isn't that beautiful? Who would believe that? That's all water they could have had. I went to the
Wait, they
governor
got him a printout of
during
his
my
own.
first term, and I said, "Why don't you do this?" And they said environmental. They have an environmental problem with clean water. If this water were there, you wouldn't have had those fires. You had sprinklers. They make people put sprinklers in the ceiling of a home, and they had no water in them. With this, they would have had a lot of water in them. They would have all been full.
Yeah.
They would have had you would have had a whole different deal down there. You probably wouldn't have had a fire, but if it was, it would have been small, would have been put out. You had the fire hydrants not working
Yeah.
in California. So it's a beautiful site. These are canals that were built.
You should sign
These
it
were
and
all
give it to
built.
somebody. Yeah, he should.
And you saw them for years. They were empty, concrete. They call them the V-shapes or the half pipes. And they're shaped different forms, but they're shaped, and they rush down through the farm areas where the farmers can take it, and down to Los Angeles. And they
It's
were
crazy
sitting
he does this
empty for
every day.
years. And now look at that. Look
Every
at that
day he
way
doing
it
this.
goes. It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up.
Mr. President.
I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California.
Uh-oh.
Let's go.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling.
Oh,
As
God.
a result of those actions, we're
He's in
now
a good
going
mood
to be
today.
suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government and who supported it accountable.
You
for
see the
what they
Gulf
did.
of
And
America?
you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
So the Covington and Burlington, is that?
Covington and Burlington.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops?
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen?
I'll take it.
Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
So, what do you say to people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith for
Excuse
his
me,
actions?
I've been targeted for 4 years. Longer than that.
So you're gonna
you
give
don't
him
tell me
the
about
pen?
targeting. I
That's
was
great.
the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years.
McConnell,
and then
true.
4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, there are approximately 2 million federal employees right now. By the end of your term, what do you expect that number to be? What would you like that number to be?
Well, it'll be lower, but I can't tell you. Everybody knows I ran on downsizing government, but making government better. I ran on tariffs and making our country rich, and that's what it's going to do. We're going to be doing something else that's going to be very, very good. We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship. And wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes
Gold
and employing
card.
a lot of people. And
Pay to
we think
win.
It's going to be extremely successful.
That's big.
And never been done before or anything like
Wow.
this, but it's something that we're going to be putting out over the next, would you say 2 weeks, Howard? You want to say a couple of words about it?
Damn.
Sure.
Mr. President, are there
Wait a minute.
Is this the
requirements
America
for that
Battle
gold card?
Pass?
Do you have to invest a certain amount of money in this country in order to qualify for that gold card?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like $1
right.
million bucks, right?
EB-5 program was really lend some money, but it was full of nonsense, make-believe, and fraud, and it was a way to get a green card that was
Yeah.
low priced. So the president said, rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really
The
a
gold card.
green card gold, so they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America. The president can give them a green card, and they can invest in America, and we can use that money to reduce our deficit. Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The
Yep.
President of the United States understands that the right answer is, why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America instead?
Fuck yeah.
The gold card, well.
The
millions,
gold
but
card.
The gold card
Oh.
will bring in with it people that create jobs, very high-level people.
Barron got this
I think
idea from
companies will pay to
Fortnite.
get people in. For instance, you today graduate from the Wharton School of Finance or Harvard or Stanford or any college, and nobody knows if you can even go to work for a company.
Uh-oh.
So Apple and all these companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card, and for the people that are number one in their class at top schools. I see that as one of the things, but generally speaking, it'll be people with money and people that create jobs. And
what about hot
they
girls?
Won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens, but have to
we
pay
gotta
if
have
they
that.
create jobs in the United States. They'll pay full taxes like everybody else.
Are they getting for
so
free?
You're getting big
they get married,
taxpayers,
that's
big
right.
job producers, and we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion.
Wow. 1 million cards,
And
5
if you sell 10 million of the cards,
10 million.
that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But, it could be great. Maybe it will be fantastic. We have it all worked out
Fantastic.
from the legal standpoint. It's totally legal to do.
All
Hasn't
right.
been done before. It's been done in many different forms. We give them away. Why should we give them away? We shouldn't
Fuck
give them
them.
away.
Yeah.
And I think
You
it's
sell
something
'em.
very exciting. I think it's
you go.
potentially just something that we're all very excited about. So it's a gold card. It's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication. It's a road to citizenship for people. And essentially people of wealth or people of great talent, where people of wealth pay for those people of talent to get in.
Okay.
Meaning companies will pay for people to get in and to have
That's great.
long-term status
Yeah, that's
in the
good.
country. And I think it's something we're very, very happy
It's pay to
about.
win?
Would you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, of course. It's,
Well,
of
many
course
other
it's pay to win.
countries, by the way, do this, including,
Yeah.
of course, your 51st state does that.
Which one?
Earmarked for deficit reduction?
It may be earmarked for deficit, but it actually could be more money than that. I mean, if you did 10 million, it would be you'd have
Which 50?
$15 trillion left over.
Oh, Canada,
Generally, it's going to be paid down debt, yes.
Could have been
Do you need
Cuba.
Congress for this?
Could have
Do you
been.
need-
No, we don't need Congress.
Greenland.
no, because we're not doing citizenship, we're doing the card.
Let's see.
It's a path to citizenship, a very strong path to citizenship, but we're not doing the citizenship. For that, I'd have to get Congress.
And would all countries be eligible for this gold card?
Depends. The countries largely, the people will be vetted very carefully.
Mr. President, on Ukraine, would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future under a peace agreement?
Say it again louder.
Would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future as part
You mean
of a
like
peace
security?
agreement? Yeah.
Well, people are going to do it. I think Europe will largely be responsible for that.
But-
European countries will be responsible.
But Macron
Non-answer.
asked for a U.S. backup.
Well, we'll see. I mean, right now we're just in the process of negotiating. We've pretty much negotiated our deal on raw earth and various other things. We'll be looking at that security. You're talking about general security for Ukraine later on. We've pretty much negotiated our deal on raw earth and various other things. We'll be looking at that security. You're talking about general security for Ukraine later on. I don't think that's going to be a problem. There are a lot of people that want to do it. And I spoke with Russia about it. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I think they understand. They're not going back in. Once we do this, they're not going
It
back
glitched?
in.
So that wasn't just me. Okay, I was about to say.
Would the U.S. provide, for instance, air defense?
Well, I just told you, right now we're not providing anything. You know, it's about Europe, too. Europe put in $100 billion, and we put in $350 billion.
I've heard this before.
It's not a fair thing. You know, we would
I keep hearing about
normally
this.
say, and I say it now anyway.
Why would Europe do that?
But we want equalization. They
That's
should put
fucked up.
actually more money than us because they're right there. We have an ocean in between. Very
Yeah.
good talks with Russia. We've had very good talks with Ukraine, and we think it maybe will come to an end and we'll stop killing young people all over the battlefield and elsewhere.
On Europe, so
It's a
you plan
lie.
to
Well, he wouldn't
maintain
lie.
Heavy military
do you
presence in Europe in the long term, like tens of thousands of troops.
We'll be involved. Yeah, we'll be
Oh, you
involved.
think he's just gonna go and
We're
make it
involved
up?
in Europe now. Europe is our friend. They take advantage of us on trade.
Uh-oh.
We don't like that. What the EU does, we don't like that.
Ooh.
But we'll solve that the old-fashioned way. We'll give them the same reciprocal numbers. You know, we're talking about a reciprocal tax. You know that. And if they charge us, we charge them. Right now, they charge us much, much more than we charge them.
Yeah.
And they have non-monetary taxes also and tariffs. And we're going to change that. It's all changing. It's all changing. We're not going to be the people that we were. We had people in this office sitting right at this desk or another model of this desk, because as you know, the other desk is right now being refurbished.
Is Steve Witkoff delaying his trip to the Middle East?
No, not that I know of. No, Steve. And the Middle East has been great. Saudi Arabia has treated us really well. They really have. And
Saudi
I think
Arabia
Qatar's treated us very well too. They want to.
Wow.
They want to get that whole mess ended in the Middle East. You know, we don't even talk about that anymore. You guys haven't asked one question about the Middle East, but
yeah, true.
the Middle East seems to be doing relatively
They
well.
fell off?
May I ask about the Middle East, sir, about the Middle East? For months, even before you were elected in November, you've spoken about your desire to free all of those hostages that have been held by Hamas since October the 7th, a year and a half ago. And just a few weeks ago, you gave an ultimatum. You said if they're not all released by noon on the they would be held to pay.
That's a good question.
Is Hamas thumbing their nose at you, Mr. President?
No, I think the opposite. So, as you know, they weren't going to release any more hostages. And I said there's going to be held to pay. And then they agreed that they were going to release the hostages that they had agreed to release, plus an extra one. And so that you could say that was a big difference. But I said it from that point, it's up to Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. I may have taken a different stance. I think the opposite. So, as you know, they weren't going to release any more hostages. And I said there's going to be held to pay. And then they agreed that they were going to release.
Camera? Yeah. This is camera fuck up.
Agreed to release plus.
It's a camera fuck
one.
up.
And so that you could say that was a big difference. But I said it from that point, it's up to Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. I may have taken a different stance. But they did release, they went back to releasing the hostages. But if you remember, they said we weren't going to release any. They've totally ended it. And I said, well, they're not going to release any. They'll be held to pay. And but the rest is really up to him. What I may have done it differently than him. It's not my decision, it's his decision. But they did release all of those hostages. So.
Mr. President, when you spoke to Vladimir Putin, did he raise or did you discuss at all the possibility of a minerals deal on the Ukrainian land that Russia now controls?
I didn't discuss it, no. I'd like to buy minerals on Russian land, too, if we can.
We're going to buy Russia?
They have very good rare earth also. They both do, I would say that, and oil and gas. Look, it's a great thing if we sell this. It's great for Russia, too, because we can do deals there. They have very valuable land. That is, something like that could take place,
Russia, 52nd state?
Or lifting sanctions against Russia on the table as your
No, we haven't lifted any sanctions.
on the table as part of any negotiation?
I guess it will be at some point, but right now we haven't agreed to lift sanctions on anybody.
On that gold card, getting back to that, I'm fascinated by this, Mr. President.
You should be fascinated by it. Your taxes will go down to nothing.
Would a Russian oligarch be eligible for a gold card?
Yeah, possibly. Hey, I know some Russian oligarchs that are very nice people. It's possible. They're not quite as wealthy as they used to be. They're not as wealthy as they used to be. I think they can afford. I think they can afford $5 million. No, a lot of people are going to want to. A lot of people are going to want to be in this country, and they'll be able to work and provide jobs and build companies.
He's trolling. Yeah, he doesn't even give a fuck.
All of those things. It's an incredible. It's an incredible thing. I mean, this is the group that is the first to hear it.
Wow.
Nobody's heard about it. Nobody ever thought about it.
Why are people laughing?
We've
This
been
is our
thinking about
president.
it
That's
very,
the
very
funny
strongly
part.
over the last week, and I was going to announce it sometime next week, and I figure why not? We have a lot of cameras blazing right now. We might as well do it now. We'll have Caroline announce it the next time. No, it's a great thing. The gold card. Remember the words. The gold card.
The gold card. All right.
Somebody said, can we call it the Trump gold card? I said, if it helps, use the name Trump. I'll give it to you for free.
I like it.
Man.
You probably just launched 10,000 stories. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what Russian oligarchs you know?
I know. Isn't it interesting how many stories we do tell? And they all turn out to be true, and they all turn out to be ultimately correct.
What are the
Trump
odds?
was right about everything. Do you have one of those Trump was right about everything? Give it to this gentleman. Get me one of them.
But they're all going to be vetted. Everybody who
my
comes
God.
in gets vetted, okay? They get vetted, so you got to, We're going to begin in 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. The sale will start in
Man.
about 2 weeks.
Mr. President, do you see a more active role for Zelensky now, given the status?
I hope so. I mean, look, I think that we want to get that country back on its feet. And right now, it's been destroyed.
I know some
It's
nice
all out
Russian
here.
oligarchs.
Give me all of them. Look. See that? Trump was right about everything. He just came in.
He's gonna start giving them
Somebody
out,
said, I
right?
said, this was sent in by a fan. I said, I think we should make some of them, right? But we were, pretty much. You want one?
I'll pass.
Are you allowed to take one? Because
not.
he'll consider it. I know him
President,
well.
I'll take one.
He's sort of a stiff.
I said you were right.
Brian, you're not a
I'll take
stiff.
one.
He's sort of a stiff guy. You know? He'll take other things, but not a free hand.
Always say yes to
He'll
the
take
president.
other-
Always say
Oh,
yes to the
God.
Would anybody like one?
Mr. President, an easy question perhaps for you, maybe it's difficult. I'm going to ask you this question about the
Who do you work for?
I work for 2 news organizations.
Who?
I work for 2 news
Yeah, who?
organizations. I work for Great Broadcaster, and I work for iHeartRadio. So there you go. But let me ask you the easier, tough question, Mr. President. The Philadelphia
Yeah.
Eagles won the Super Bowl.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Being extended an invitation?
They will be. We haven't
Okay.
yet, but we will be. I thought it was a great performance by them, and absolutely they'll be extended that invitation. Would you do that right away? by the
So,
way? We'll do it right away. We're going to do it sometime today, and they deserve to be down here. And,
They're
we hope to see
$15?
them.
Wait, so
We
is
have
he
a lot
actually
of- we
selling
just
the
had
hats?
Great hockey team, as you know, Florida come.
So is he
here.
selling the hats
We
or
have
not?
Many of the great athletes come.
We're
that
selling
win
the
games.
hats. Okay.
What's the main obstacle holding
So
back
he's selling merch
people
from.
who live golf?
Well, they have to get together. You know, they've had a lot of discussion back and forth. They both are meaning well, and
Man.
a deal will ultimately happen. I
Man.
think it'll happen pretty quickly. It'll be nice
I'm
to
getting
see the
one.
golfers, the best golfers, be able to play against each other.
What's your
Yep,
role
ABC
in-
always be
Just to
selling.
help expedite it. Tiger was here. Adam Scott was here.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Monahan was here the other day. Just to really help expedite it. We had Yasser here from Saudi Arabia, great guy. These are all great people.
Great guy.
And they want to work it out. So if I can help them work it out, I don't get anything out of it. If I can help them work it out, I just think golf. It's very much of an individual sport, and you want to see
Well, he
the
likes
best players
golf.
playing against each other, not playing in 2 different locations, right?
Uh-huh.
What's going to be more challenging, a PGA Live deal or Russia-Ukraine deal?
I think the PGA deal is much more complicated.
Yeah.
Sir, may I ask you the Middle East question, if I may? What's your take
Bro.
on what's happening in the West Bank and what Israel is
Well,
doing
it's
there?
some movement up there that a lot of
Bro,
people are
it's
concerned
insane.
about.
He loves golf.
And,
He
There's
does.
been a lot of Israeli movement. They're up there for a reason. All of a sudden, maybe they're
He's
not
cooking
feeling
today?
so good about
Yeah,
that.
he is.
So that would be terrible. I hope that doesn't happen. But there is movement up there that nobody knew about. Right? You know that, right?
Yeah, and when you say, are you concerned about it as well?
I'm concerned about everything. I want the world
Concerned
to be
about
peaceful. You know,
everything.
when I left here, we had no war. We
Wow.
had defeated ISIS in less than 4 weeks. In fact, I took
Easy.
the general that defeated ISIS and I put him in charge of the whole ball game, because that's what we want. We want winners. Raisin Cane, you know, Raisin. And when I heard that name, I said, I like that name. That's the kind of general I like. So we'll see. But he was great. He's a great soldier. Not a politician, a soldier, a real soldier. You know that, Brian. This guy was the real. This guy's
Oh,
the
God.
Story a million times.
Yeah, this guy's the
We've
real
heard
deal.
the story a million times.
And, I
Yeah.
think he's going to do a great job. But think of it. We had no wars. We had no problems. We had no inflation. We had no problems.
It's
And then
good.
all of
I
a
think
sudden you
Raisin
have
Cane's is
October
delicious.
7th in Israel, which was horrible. And then you see what happened with Ukraine. Russia would have never gone in if the election weren't rigged. It was a rigged election.
Oh.
The 2020 election was rigged, and we got out of it.
Damn.
And you see what happened. You
Shit.
see what
Really?
happened to our country. Inflation, Afghanistan, that horrible withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think when Russia
Oh
saw
my
what
God.
happened in Afghanistan, they said, wow, it's a paper tiger. We're not a paper tiger. We are the strongest military force in the world. And by the way, Pete Hegseth is doing a great job. But we didn't have wars. We didn't have inflation.
Yeah.
We had a strong border. We had everything going good. And then Biden got in, and he's, my opinion, the worst president in the history of our country. I think Jimmy Carter was a very happy man when he passed away 2 weeks ago.
What are you expecting at the cabinet meeting
Just implying Jimmy Carter's
It'll
the
be a
second
cabinet
worst.
meeting, and I'll preside, unlike Biden, I'll preside over my
Yeah.
own cabinet.
How do you compare your cabinet in your second term to your cabinet that you had in your first term?
Well, I had some great people my second term. I think this is deeper. I think it's better because it's deeper.
Yeah.
I had some people that I didn't really like too much in my cabinet, but I didn't know Washington then. I was a New York person. I knew New York intimately, but I had to rely on people. I had great people. Look, we got the biggest tax cuts in history. I rebuilt the military. I mean, we did so much. We did unbelievable. Even right to try. Somebody was saying today they were saved by right to try. We did right to try medically. We did
I agree with that.
transparency medically. That was a big thing, but Biden canceled that one. He didn't cancel right to try, which is interesting. He didn't cancel Space Force. He was going to cancel Space Force. Space Force is turning out to be invaluable.
Wow.
Amazing. We created Space Force.
They're trying to shut down the
But
Space
think of
Force?
it, we rebuilt our entire military, and now we're going to have to patch it up a little bit again because of what's happened. No, this was a grossly incompetent administration. The only thing they were good at was cheating in elections and the weaponization of government. Thank you very much, everybody.
Not so good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Wow.
It's bedtime to take it.
All right, you're just listening in there to those comments, those executive orders from Washington, D.C. with President Trump. Some very big news coming out of this here on Live Now from Fox.
Oh,
We're
my God.
following very, very closely.
Wow. So we have a new gold card. Russian oligarchs can get it. There are a lot of nice Russian oligarchs. Trump is selling hats that say that he was right about everything. And the Gulf of America. Oh, and apparently fish don't do so well when they don't have water. It's just another day. It's just, hey, yo, it's just another day, boys. That's life. Why was RFK there? They need to pass an executive order that makes it to where you can't sell bottled soda with high fructose corn syrup. You can only do it with pure cane sugar. So they need to get that, like, because they could probably do that in like probably a week, right? Something like that. I think that's what would be fair. Yeah, and why not? Why not do that? Really curious if you agree with the gold card specifically. I don't think it's like off the top of my head. I don't think it's a bad idea because like we let people do this already. He just increased the ceiling for it or the floor, right? Yeah, it already existed. Like if you invest into the U.S., you get effectively kind of a green card anyway. They just increased the price more than anything. So yeah, I don't think it's bad, but I don't know. I mean that's where I'm at right now. I don't have like a crazy opinion. So yeah. And Skyrim stream music, yeah, it's good, man. It's great. And what new content will be in the Space Force patch? Well, they need to put the Marines in the Space Force so we can have Space Marines. And so that's really the next step. I think everybody knows that. I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but yeah, it does know that. Do you think the what's this here? The visa will be lorded over people before they bring in immigrants? They got cards free. Why the fuck would we bring in people for free if we can get them to give us $5 million? What are you, retarded? You have two worlds, one where you have $5 million and one where you don't have any dollars. Who wants to be in the world with no dollars? Nobody. Fucking nobody, let's be honest.